Hello and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. In today's talk, I was going to go through analysis of a full moon or Purnima that's happening June 21st, 2024. That's today where I am. And it seemed like the kind of overriding theme for this moment in time is journey to authentic happiness. So let's take a look. Note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. And you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. If you're new to Vedic astrology, Jyotish are my videos. All of my teaching videos on the subject are my concepts playlists, so they can be found there. And wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject if you'd like to learn more. And then I'm all about playlists, so I slot all my videos in the playlist so that they're easier to find. So some of the playlists that may be helpful, again, especially if you're new, is the planets grahas playlist, where you can learn about the symbolism of each planet. Houses bhavas playlist, where you can find out about the symbolism of each house. And yogas or planetary combinations, which are special combinations of planets that give kind of super special effects in somebody's chart potentially. And if you'd like to learn astrology by looking at birth charts, I've analyzed a lot of famous birth charts, famous people, places, and moments in time on this channel. And I have a birth chart archive list 2024 video where I have a list of all the birth charts I've gone through and the videos you can find them in. So that'll help you find birth charts of different people, like whatever you're interested in, sports people or politicians or, what have you, or certain countries, perhaps. So, other videos to watch in addition to this one to get more out of this talk, because again, this is an interpretation video, so I incorporate a lot of different concepts. But North, South, and East Indian style charts, I do cover Western style charts in that video as well, but it's not part of the title. Introduction to navigating a birth chart. Introduction to the constellations or rashis, constellation or rashi categories, planetary aspects, natural benefic and malefic planets or grahas, chidra grahas or planets of vulnerability, planetary exaltation, debilitation, bhavat bhavam, house of the house concept, planetary war or graha yuddha, karako bhavanasha or planet breaking house, nakshatras or lunar mansions, and then a few yogas we're going to be talking about: budhaditya yoga, the intelligence combination; parivartana yoga, exchange of houses; sarpa yoga, which is an ambition kind of a combination; pravraja yoga, which is a life focus combination. And then also you want to be really good about what the lugna is, which is also known as the ascendant, rising sign, or first house, because that first house really sets the tone, overall tone for anybody's birth chart. Okay, so lots to learn. Okay, so let's take a look at the chart for this moment in time of the full moon. 21st June 2024. I've set it for 21:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the zone I live in. The day lord is Venus, and the Hara lord or hour lord is Mercury. So you can see Venus and Mercury are both in the seventh house, and the seventh house represents things like relationships, especially spouse or spouse-like relationship, and Venus is the karaka, the planet representing that as well. And then you have Mercury there. Mercury swads in its own sign of Gemini. So between these two already, Venus is like a lot of emotions and art you can think of, and Mercury, especially in its own sign, is it can be business, and also it can potentially be meditation. I usually see that, or somebody who's interested in like meditation or Buddhism, that sort of thing. Now, both of these planets are combust at this moment in time, meaning that they're so close to the sun that you can't see them. They're essentially eclipsed by the light of the sun. So, when a planet's eclipsed, you won't see necessarily outward effects of the things that the planet symbolizes, but the inner aspects will be stronger. So, there's going to be a lot of internal work uh, going on here, okay, in the realm of again, not just spouse-like partners, but also like business partners potentially. and emotional, and also Mercury is like the rational mind, logical mind. So it's kind of a sorting through of what makes sense versus, what does the heart feel. The Dasha period at this time, the planetary period, is Ketu, Rahu, Venus, Moon. So Ketu and Rahu generally indicate things that are unusual, unexpected, and Venus and Moon um, are both emotional planets. They're also both art planets, like artistic, creative, aesthetic planets. So we're getting, and also Rahu can symbolize things like ambition. So now, if you add to Venus and Mercury here, because they're both aspecting the moon, and the moon's aspecting them, that's a mutual aspect, you'll start to get this like unusual ambition uh, added to the Venus and Mercury situation. Now, the other thing that I thought was very interesting, which doesn't happen very often, that I've seen, is that you can see Ketu and Rahu are in Kendras. So the Kendras are the four houses in the middle of the chart, and the four houses in the middle of the chart represent the Kendras represent kind of the core energy of somebody. So often when we see like Rahu and Ketu in the Kendras, this might be somebody who is like a foreigner, like an immigrant. Mm. It could also represent somebody who's excuse me, uh, or feels like a foreigner, feels like an outsider. It could also be somebody who's interested in like technology or in like things like the internet. So those are things that Rahu and Ketu represent. But there's like this kind of unusual quality. Now, and then and then again, the funny thing is Venus is in seventh house and Moon is in the first house. So literally, the Shah period is all the planets are in all four kendras. So to me, that's indicating that there's like a major core phenomenon going on here. Okay. Um, and so it looks like, again, some sort of decision making is going on internally. The other thing is, like I mentioned, Rahu and Ketu can represent things like the internet and technology. The other thing is that this Mercury Venus Sun combination that I circled here, which is a pravraja yoga or life focus combination, all three of those planets are in the nakshatra of Ardra. So a nakshatra is a lunar mansion. Every night the moon goes through another different mansion, lunar mansion. And so since there are 27 lunar mansions, after 27 nights, you essentially get a lunar moon. So getting back to Ardra, though, Ardra is symbolized by a drop of water. Excuse me. And that drop of water can come from like a storm cloud or like a hurricane or something like that. So, so you can think of like thunder and lightning. So there's a lot of like electric energy here. Um, so I could see so we're kind of picking up this idea of like potentially technology again or internet again. And I often see when people have placements of like Moon or Venus, again, the two planets indicating arts in Ardra, I often see them having an interest in photography, especially a digital photography. And because Mercury and Venus are combust, um, Mercury being in its own sign, indicating potentially entrepreneurial activity, and again, the seventh house indicating independent business. Looks like there's a strong drive at this time for developing some independent business that you can't see because, again, these planets are combust. And so that would indicate even more like a business you can't see, like something that's not a, what are they, brick and mortar type store, but like something online, like maybe a social media type thing. Or this could be like an Instagram account, for example, because you have so much like potential energy for photography here. So something very like digital arts based, internet digital arts based independent business is what I'm saying here. So yeah, so again, this K2 Rahu Venus Moon, like to literally have each of these planets in one of the kendras, I'm seeing this as again a pretty big core shift. Again, if this was a person that we were looking at, but if we're talking about a moment in time, this could be, again, leaning towards collective energy at this moment. So then on August 8th, we're switching from K2 Rahu Venus to K2 Rahu Sun. So now the sun represents career, and it also represents soul, and it also represents purpose. Now you can see the sun. So I would see, again, whatever this enterprise is in the seventh house that we're looking at here, it's going to be unusual. There's going to be ambition here. There's going to be arts, emotion, business, marketing. But there's going to be like soul and purpose to it as well. And again, I think, all of these things brought together. That's why, like, the theme for the month of, journey towards authentic happiness. This is a deep kind of shift internally to really be in alignment with one's true purpose and destiny. The other thing about the seventh house, besides representing things like spouse-like relationships, business partnerships, independent business, is the seventh house represents like how does somebody, um, how are they at like finding their way, through the journey of life? And so when we have, Mercury in its own sign, there's strength to this house. And so I would think even though this person is kind of sorting through things and there might be some, disappointments along the way, because again, this Ardra with these three planets in Ardra, the drop of water I mentioned, which can come from like a storm cloud, it can also represent like a teardrop. So there can be like a lot of sadness associated with it and psychology associated with the nakshatra of Ardra. So, there may have been some lumps and bumps along the way, but again, if we're talking about a person here, this is somebody who would find their way through it. Whatever obstacles come up, they would still be following their true north. And that seems to be, exactly what's going on in this moment of time collectively. Um, okay, so also the Lagna nakshatra, so the rising sign nakshatra is Purva Ashada. Purva Ashada is symbolized by a winnowing basket. So this kind of, usually it's like a woven basket, and you see people shaking it, and they shake wheat on this thing. And so it separates the edible parts from the inedible parts. So there's a sorting process going on here, which again, we're also seeing with this Mercury and Venus combust situation going on in the seventh house. The other thing is that Mercury and Venus were just recently in a planetary war. So you can see that they're only a few degrees apart. So it was it the beginning of this week? Yeah, it was about a week ago, beginning of this week. They started last week. Yeah, so about a week ago, Mercury and Venus were at war. So there was a destabilization, kind of a, head-to-head matchup of like Mercury's like the rational, logical mind, and Venus is like heart and feeling and compassion, right? So looks like whatever kind of mashup there was between Mercury and Venus last week, now we're getting to the how do we move forward? How do I move into a situation where instead of my mind and my heart being at odds with each other, they're in alignment with my soul? Mercury, Venus, Sun here, and then we have again full moon aspecting this as well. So mind, emotion, soul, spirit, all lined up on one axis. So there's a sorting process going on here, a mulling over process. And then the moon nakshatra, the moon is in Mula. So Mula is symbolized by a bunch of roots tied together. And so you can literally think of that as like planting. And the moon represents things like imagination and the mind. So this is a mind that there might be a little bit of, there could potentially be a destructive energy here to some degree, because whenever you plant a seed and the seed starts growing, the seed has to kind of die to itself, and it starts to crack open, and then a little shoot comes up and it kind of pushes through the soil and comes to the top, and then hopefully, it keeps growing. But that's the thing is, right, not all seeds will make it to the surface. So there is this kind of, again, this kind of notion of like a bit of an arduous journey and a bit of precariousness here in terms of things aren't quite set. The other thing is that, in this chart, we're looking at was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 planets in dual signs. You know, especially in a dual rising sign chart like this, because it's a Sagittarius rising. there's gonna be a dualness to this. There's gonna be a wavering energy here. And so again, that might actually add to this kind of sorting energy that we're getting with the Lagna Nakshatra and Purva Ashada. But so it's sort of like a precarious moment in terms of, okay, well, if we're going to plant some new ideas here, in terms of like moving forwards with some sort of, potential like internet, visual internet art type endeavor, or it could be also a relationship as well. If we're looking at Venus here, because there could be like this could if we're looking at we'll look at the seventh house, but by itself, but the seventh house because there's three planets in Ardra. I would think that the partner, if this person had a partner, would be quite electrifying in some ways, but also potentially there would be a lot of psychology involved with that person, and also sadness potentially, like kind of a whirlwind. I think there's a song like that, right? It hit me like a hurricane. That's the kind of partner this person would have. Okay, so there's planting of new ideas, sorting through like maybe, which seeds to plant. Although it looks like there's a fairly strong idea of what direction to go. But, is this going to work? Is this practical? Is it logical? Even if I want to do this, does it make sense to do it? Working through all that kind of stuff. Now, the other thing is that the context is yesterday, just a few hours ago, we had June solstice. So June solstice, marks, whether you're in the northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere, extreme ends of the solar cycle. So either the sun at its highest point, apex and strength, highest strength, or at the lowest point and at its weakest point. So again, there's like some new cycle here going on, beginning and end, and maybe both, because whenever you have a new end, you have a new beginning, right? You have to let go of the old stuff to allow the new stuff in, right? Like that saying, nature abhors a vacuum, right? Sometimes we have to let stuff go, create a vacuum so that the universe can bring in whatever is new for us. Yeah. All right, so I'm probably getting some kind of vibe here already from the chart. Let's go through house by house, starting at the top. At the Lugna, rising sign, first house, all different names for the same thing. This is a North Indian style chart, if you're wondering. And so to get to the other houses, you start at the top. That middle diamond is the first house, rising sign, ascendant Lugna. And that little 9 in the corner represents not the ninth house, but the ninth constellation of the zodiac, which is Sagittarius or Danu in Sanskrit. And then to get to the second house, you actually go counterclockwise, so up and back, so that kind of upside down triangle in the upper left side, that's the second house. Okay. All right, so the Lugna here, as I mentioned, is Sagittarius or Danu, which is a dual fire sign. So all the dual signs, there's kind of a mixed kind of mindset about it typically. And fire signs are all about action. So again, it's kind of like, with the Purva Ashada energy and the Mula energy and the Lugna here and all this Ardra energy, it's like really churning deep within, logically and emotionally, like what sort of seeds should I plant to move forward? Potentially also, especially in regards to self, because the Lugna represents the self, both the physical self and the personality. But then again, the seventh house, partnerships, personal or professional, and potentially independent business. And also, again, true north, like what direction of life do I want to take? All right. Excuse me. Then you got a full moon here in Mula, as I mentioned. You've got the sun aspecting it. You've got a combos Venus aspecting. You have a combos Swa Mercury here. And the sun, again, Mercury, Venus are all in Ardra. It's a fairly intense moment, or again, if this is an individual, a fairly intense individual. Um, the Lugnatia, the ruling planet for the chart is Jupiter. Jupiter's gone to the sixth house, which is an Artastana. So the Artastana, Arta means like material wealth. So again, this person, again, if it was a person or moment of time, they've gone to the sixth house, which um, is artistana, again, a material wealth building house, but it's also like a house of enemies. It's also a house of acute issues. So there is some kind of problem that this person is sorting through. Luckily, Jupiter's in Rohini. Rohini is like one of the most attractive and luscious, lovely nakshatras. So again, if this is a person, they might be going through some stuff right now, but I think they're really trying to improve, beautify, upgrade, whatever their experience has been up to this point, because Jupiter is a planet of abundance and compassion and, equality and fairness and generosity. And again, Rohini is just, you can almost think of like Aphrodite or Goddess Lakshmi or something like that, just generosity and growth and fertility. So, so that also means that, like, since Jupiter is in those energies and Jupiter is the ruling planet for the first house, is that the field here, excuse me, the field here for this person is pretty, I would say, pretty fertile. So then the trick is, like, what are the seeds that we're going to plant in the soil? Because, right, you could have the right seed, you can have a really great seed in a really great soil, but if they don't match up, then the seed may not grow or survive or make it to the top and flourish, right? So you gotta, make sure you're planting the right seeds in the right place. But at least there's potential here, is what I'm seeing from that. Um, Mhm. And then let's see. What else? What did I write here? Sorting through emotional decisions. I talked about that regarding partnerships, personal, professional, planting mental seeds. Again, this internal storminess and sadness I mentioned, media, social, digital, business, creativity. Again, there could be a lot of psychological insight here too, because again, that Mercury, Venus, Sun are all in this nakshatra of Ardra. Um, there's a lot of psychological, emotional psychological implications with that nakshatra. And then again, considering a pretty deep shift of core self, mind, emotions, image, activities, because again, these are the four houses in the middle here. So, yeah, so this is a pretty big moment, deep shift. Um, then if we look at the chidra grahas, so the chidra grahas are, you can think of as the planets of vulnerability, kind of like Achilles' heel or like a thorn in the side, kind of like a point that might be, niggling for somebody throughout their life. So here, the chidra grahas are Jupiter and Mercury, the two communication planets, also the two education planets. And then Mars is the leadership, innovative planet. And then Moon, Mercury and Moon are the two mind planets. Mercury is the logical mind, and Moon is the emotional mind. So what I'm saying here is like, um, leadership, shifting. Sorry, I keep drinking things to try to keep my voice going here, but it doesn't seem to be working that well today. It's pretty hot today too, so that fog is probably not helping. Sorry, I'm trying to do what I can, so I'm not like, clearing my throat every 5 minutes, but hopefully this will get better if I keep drinking. So, water. So, anyway, back to the Chitragraha. So again, education here, thinking here, shifts, innovation here. Um, but the other thing is like Jupiter can be children, Mercury, and Jupiter and Mercury, the education planet. So that might be a sticking point for this person. Um, the moon, again, because moon is a Mula, um, that might be a sticking point for somebody too throughout their life. Also, moon can represent mother, and Mars can represent siblings. So there might be some, family relationship issues here, which seems to be the case. Then if we move on to like yogi, aviyogi, duplicate yogi, which are planets representing potential wealth or dearth in somebody's life. So the yogi is the moon. So there is actually, strong indications this person would have some wealth. Although we do have Mercury here, which is the Ava Yogi, so Earth here potentially. So that's something to be considered, especially if somebody is starting up a new business, or this could actually be that the partner is dealing with or has dealt with, dearth or money issues, finance issues. And then the duplicate yogi is Venus. So we kind of have this mix of wealth and lack of wealth going on both on in the first house of self and then the seventh house of partner. So I would see from this, and there are other indications as well that this is like there may not be a lot of financial stability here for this person if we're looking at a person. Then there are a bunch of yogas here. So we have a Richika yoga. So that's Mars in its own sign in the Kendra Trikona. So that's going to be a lot of leadership and innovation and bravado and courage. Then we have a Bhadra yoga. This is Mercury in its own sign in the Kendra Trikona. So that's going to bring intelligence. And then we have a budhaditya yoga, which is qualified. The budhaditya yoga is Mercury and Sun in its own sign. Or sorry, in the same sign. And this budhaditya happens to be aspecting the first house, so that's how you qualify a Mercury or budhaditya yoga. So intelligence again. Then the three planets I mentioned: Mercury, Venus, Sun, and one of the positive houses, the seventh house here, is a pravraja yoga, life focus. So all these yogas are giving power, focus, and intelligence. Again, if we were looking at this chart as a person instead of moment in time. The other thing that I thought was noteworthy here is that since we have Moon and Mula, and we have 3 planets in Ardra, and we're talking about a dasha period of Ketu Rahu. So Ketu and Rahu again are like indicate things that are unusual, unexpected, that sort of thing. Well, Mula, the star of Mula, or Tara of Mula, is Ketu. So deep within the moon is like more Ketu energy here. And then Ardra, so we have 3 planets in Ardra. The star of Ardra, or Tara of Ardra, is Rahu. So we've got 4 planets on the 1-7 axis that are either in Ketu or Rahu. So not only do we have obviously the planets Rahu and Ketu in the 4th and 10th house, which is going to bring again this unusualness to this person or kind of unexpected or foreign type vibe, somebody who sticks out, out of the crowd isn't like, maybe going to follow the crowd. And then you have 4 planets and stars of Rahu or Ketu, and all of this is going on in the Kendras. This is going to be a highly unusual person, like a very unconventional person, is what I would get from this. And that may be why part of the reason why this person is considering like an independent business. Because again, what I'm seeing here, this is somebody who's just very intelligent, very quick mind, a very powerful mind, very artistic, creative, unusual. I mean, this is not your like, Navy suit, corporate type person at all. Um, so anyway, that's part of what's going on here. Again, is like an overall, energy or vibe for the chart in terms of like, again, if this is a person, who would this person be? All right, so let's go through the other houses and see what else we see here. So the second house lord is Saturn, and Saturn is Swats in its own sign, and it's in Purva Bhadrapada nakshatra at the moment. Purva Bhadrapada is symbolized by the front legs of a funeral pyre. So there's a lot of destructive energy and chaotic energy here, and actually Purva Bhadrapada has a similar deity of Rudra. Rudra is the sort of a god of storm that rules over Ardra, and a similar version of that deity rules over Purva Bhadrapada. So now we've got 4 planets in this very like chaotic, destructive type energy. Not that it has to be bad. It just means that this is somebody who's going to have a lot of transformative energy. And so especially if this person seems like this person, I don't think there's anything much hidden about this person's probably going to be somebody who's like very clearly unusual from the first time you meet them. I don't think there's anything hidden here. But just by them being themselves, even if they're not grandstanding about some cause or something that they have, they're going to be pushing the envelope, just being themselves. And again, this person, part of what this person or this moment in time for all of us is striving for is to, embrace our quirkiness, embrace our uniqueness, embrace our strangeness, and potentially even capitalize on it, with this Mercury in its own sign in the 7th house. Make a lifestyle out of it, make a career out of it, rather than try to fit in. Because I don't think this person would fit in anyway, as much as they tried. And it's like, square peg, round hole. And it's not like the square peg is bad. It's just that it's just again the fit, right? It's just not the right fit. It's not gonna, most conventional places aren't gonna be somewhere where this person flourishes and where their uniqueness is like celebrated. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So, let's see. And then the second house has an aspect by Jupiter. Jupiter's debilitated in Capricorn and something else here. The other thing is that this Saturn is bhavat bhavam. So bhavat bhavam in this, and we have a few bhavat bhavams, but in this case, the second house lord has gone 2 houses away to the third house. So there's going to be like, especially with Jupiter, Jupiter usually indicates things like oral communication, and it's aspecting the second house of oral communication, but it's debilitated there. So I think again at this moment, this might be more of an inside job of somebody sorting through. They may not be talking because the second house also represents friends and inner circle, close friends. This might be a moment where this person isn't necessarily talking about all the things they're churning through right now. And they're kind of going through their own internal process, but then over time, um, the conversation might be had. Although it might also be that chronically, this is not somebody who divulges much. Or like when they talk, they feel like they're not heard or people understand them, that sort of thing. And then again, the second house going to the third house, there might be a lot of written communication, more than verbal communication going on here, like journaling potentially. But then if we shift over to, oh wait, well, let's finish the second house first. So this could be like one conversation after another with this bhavat bhavam of Saturn here. But I don't think the conversations are very productive because again, you have this massive Saturn in Purva Bhadrapada. So I think whatever conversations are had are not really helping. And so that's why again, it's going to be really important for this person or this at this moment in time to go deep within and find out your own true north, in terms of because everybody's going to have a different answer about, what is happiness. Like there's even a movie I think like called Hector's Journey of Happiness, or it's actually kind of a funny movie. If you ever want to pick it up, I think it's a British movie. But yeah, this guy goes all around the world and just he's a psychologist and he's feeling kind of, I don't know, unmotivated or depressed or something in his life. And so he's like, I'm going to travel around the world and talk to different people and interview people. And, so he meets like, you know, high flying businessmen in Asia and then he goes to Africa and he just keeps at it like, what's happiness to you? And everybody has a different answer. So then he realizes he's got to figure out his own answer. Anyway, it's kind of a funny movie. I'm into movies, I think, if you watch my channel. So if you like a movie recommendation, there's one for you. So anyway, um, the other thing is that since Jupiter can represent things like loans and banking, and it's in the sixth house of acute issues, and it's aspecting the second house of assets, and money and savings and stuff like this, this could be like a churn right now of things regarding things like assets and finance and loans. So again, there's what I'm seeing here overall in the chart in several ways is that there's some financial instability going on here. The other thing is that not only is Jupiter debilitated in the second house, but the Lord dispositor of Jupiter is Venus, which is combust. So again, there's like, if we're looking at the field in which Jupiter is in the sixth house, the field is not stable or solid. Let's see it that way. All right, then the third house, we have the massive Swa, Saturn. So there's strength here, and the third house represents things like siblings and neighbors. But Saturn is in Aquarius, which is a fixed air sign, so long-standing ideology. This is like, like Aquarians and stuff like that. They have ideas that are hard to shift, over time. They're pretty stuck in their mental habits or mental thoughts. And so there can be difficulties there in terms of regarding strong ideology, siblings, neighbors. There could literally be a breakdown here not only of ideology, but literally the self. Like, again, if we spin the chart and put the third house in the first house position, then we're like assessing siblings. And I would think that Saturn and Purva Bhadrapada in Aquarius, even though the person might be strong, is that there's still going to be a struggle and shift and change, massive change there. Because Saturn is a the slowest moving planet. It takes about 29 years to go through the whole zodiac. And whatever Saturn touches, it's almost like the steamroller energy where it just sort of flattens things out. So that, again, there's like a renewal. It's kind of like what we talked about with the Mula energy. It's like sometimes you have to clear space for the new stuff to come in. So there's a lot of, destructive energy, even though there's strength there at the same time in this third house. And this third house might also be potentially like a resignation letter. The third house represents like a written communication. So this could be like maybe somebody's been in a position for quite a while, and part of this, if they're going to go into independent business, maybe they got to let go of their 9 to 5 job. Which, when we get to the 10th house, we'll see more of that. So this Saturn could also be again a resignation letter. Now the fourth house lord is Jupiter, which is in Rohini. That's pretty nice. But we've got Rahu here. So, and Rahu's in Revati. So that's another pretty nice, gentle energy. Revati is the last nakshatra, and it's all about like travel and hospitality and that sort of thing. So there's kind of gentle, nurturing energy in the fourth house. The only thing that was Rahu is a planet that's, again, got this unexpected energy to it. It's also got ambition. And the fourth house represents things like mom and family lineage, but it also represents happiness. So again, there's a drive here to find happiness. Hence the theme of the month or theme of the moment, yeah. And also a drive towards home. Like and again, with these, we started off with all these sorting through all these emotional planet energies in the beginning. So it's kind of like, what's really going to make me happy? What's going to really make me feel like home, especially if this is somebody who's got all this Rahu Ketu energy all over their kendras through the stars and the planets. It's like, this is somebody who, may have a hard time finding their place in the world, like their tribe or their soul family or, however you want to call it. And that's what's coming up here. Then the fifth house lord is a Swam Mars, massive Mars in Bharani. Mars is all about innovation and, rebelliousness and, especially Mars in its own sign in the fifth house of intellect. This is going to be a sharp cookie here, a very smart person. In addition to, again, the budhaditya yoga we've got, and then that's qualified in the Bhadra yoga. Very intelligent person here. And even that sometimes maybe they're too intelligent for most places. They're not going to, like they're the first ones to get it voted off the island type thing, like because they're too independent and too smart, and they just, they'll rock the boat. Somebody who would rock the boat, and so they might be better off doing their own thing. The thing that was at the Saturn in the third house is aspecting the fifth house, so that's going to bring some instability here, because Saturn is debilitated in Aries. So this is somebody who's like looking to, again, I think, find new cycles or new solutions to longstanding problems, personal or, professionally as well, potentially. But this is somebody I think who can like endure difficulties. The other thing is, and with the Saturn Mars combination, that often gives like, again, an engineering combination, endurance combination, also like an athlete and, combination. So there's a lot of innovation, strength, and endurance with this person's mind. So like this person has like an engineering type mind, I would say. But with these two malefics in the fifth house, this could also indicate difficulties with children. Yeah. And then let me back up a little bit, but I don't think I wrote it down. Oh, the fourth house, because there's a natural malefic there, and the lord of the fourth house has gone to a negative house, even though there's like gentleness here and like generosity here and stuff like that. This could also indicate, this would essentially create what we would call a kuhu yoga, which is a negative house yoga for the fourth house. So this would indicate, even though there's this gentle energy coming through with the nakshatras and Jupiter, um, that there could be issues with mom, problems with mom. There could also be issues with things like education, because that's what the fourth house represents. So I need to go back and put those on the notes before I forget, hopefully. So, and then the sixth house here, I've mentioned a little bit. So the Lord is this combust Venus, so there's not a lot of stability in terms of the field here. And then Jupiter's in Rohini. So again, unstable self, because Jupiter is the Lagnisha, the ruling planet for the first house in the chart. Home, finances, because again, Jupiter's the Lord of the fourth house, Jupiter's aspect in the second house. Also children, because Jupiter in and of itself represents children. And we're seeing, like, again, two malefics in the fifth house here. But the thing is, like, this moment is like this person is trying their best to find, like, the silver lining, to create balance, to create harmony, to create, like, a new positive outcome, and also the sixth house represents, like, daily activity. So this could be somebody who's trying to kind of, Jupiter can represent spirituality, like spiritualize their daily activities, to be more in alignment with their true self, their authentic self, to create more happiness. Because again, this is just you just see from this chart, this is not somebody who's going to be, run with the crowd type of person. They've got to do their own thing. And that's the thing, is sometimes that's hard, because it's like it's two sides of the same coin, right? Like, you do your own thing, but if you're doing your own thing, then, that inherently usually means that if you're doing your own thing, you're kind of on your own on some level. And not that you can't, bring people along with you on the journey, but especially with this kind of chart and being having this much unusual energy, especially in the Kendras, it might be a little bit tougher for this person to find their crowd, their people they feel at home with. So yeah, so those are the first few houses here. Okay, so same information on the left here. The right side, though, I've got notes for the other houses as we go through. So the seventh house, again, the seventh lord is a swa, combust, bhavat, bhavam, Mercury. So Saturn's bhavat, bhavam, but Mercury is also bhavat, bhavam here. So Mercury's bhavat, bhavam, the 10th house lord has gone 10 houses away, which actually would potentially be a good thing for somebody who's interested in independent business, because the 10th lord going 10 houses away means that you would potentially have one business after another, or one customer after another. So that might be nice. Somebody's interested in going that direction. And then we have a combust karako bhava nashaya Venus. So I did mention the combustion of Venus. So you can't see Venus right now, and it's an Ardra, but the karako bhava nashaya. So when you have a planet representing a certain person in the house representing the same person, in this case, Venus represents the spouse or spouse-like partner, in the house representing spouse or spouse-like partner, that may sound like a good idea, but actually that it's almost like too much energy. So when we see Venus in the seventh house, that can indicate relationship issues. And it doesn't necessarily mean problems between the native and the spouse. It can be, but it could be that the spouse themselves, in and of themselves, is having problems. And especially with this kind of combination with three planets in Ardra, it may be that the partner is having temporary or long-term mental health issues or emotional issues, is what I would gather from this. Because again, we have Moon and Mula, so that's another emotional planet in a that's kind of destructive, transitionary, and there's not a lot of stability going on here on the 1-7 axis. So it's again a big transition time. The only thing is that again Jupiter is not combust and it's Rohini, so that gives the field for the first house something, and then you do get a little strength from Mercury being in its own sign, even though it's combust. So yeah, so what are we seeing here in the seventh house? Sadness, disappointment again, spouse, maybe relationship regarding partner, independent business. Brainstorming, again, that's this Mercury, Venus, Moon, combination across the 1-7 axis going on here with the Purva Ashada and Mula and Ardra and all that. There's a lot of internal churning mentally and emotionally right now. for both native and partner or partners, business partners. The business partners might be, sorting through all this stuff themselves as well. Like the Mercury in its own sign, this could be like literally trying to crunch numbers and come up with a business plan or something like that. Then again, sorting through thoughts, feelings, ideas, electrical, digital, psychological. So that's the thing is again, sorry, drinking water doesn't seem to be helping enough. So again, even though there's stormingness or unusualness here on the 1-7 axis, at least they're, luckily, at least they're mostly, benefic planets. I mean, at least it's a full moon. That's great. The moon is strong. That's a benefic planet, especially when it's full. Mercury in its own sign, and you've got two benefics on it. You do have Sun on it, which is considered malefic, but Sun is at least sattvic. So actually, like, even though there's all this, like, again, transformative energy here, this is a positive transformation going on here, especially mentally, emotionally. So whatever this person has gone through, again, it looks like they're going to take that, harness it, and then, you know, make a business out of it, potentially. So, everything happens for a reason, right? So again, multiple jobs and clients because of the bhavam Mercury here. And then again, Mercury and Venus recently had a planetary war. So it looks like something came to a head about a week ago. And now it's like, okay, well, do we want to keep doing what we've been doing? Or is it time to make a pretty significant change? So it looks like it's time for a change. And the eighth house here, the eighth house is like this full moon in the eighth house Lord is this full moon in Mula. So again, planting seeds in deep psychology. Um, but you do also have Mars, this massive Mars aspecting into the eighth house, where it's debilitated in Cancer. So there is this kind of, I would say, even deep within the mind, this very kind of innovative, rebellious, but potentially unstable psychology. So that's the thing is, if this person, I mean, I'm sure there are moments in time when this person feels like they're on the edge mentally and emotionally. But it looks like, again, because of the strength in the chart, or at least this moment, it might be a tough moment right now to go through all this. For looking at it as a moment of time. Um, but these planets are going to shift, right? So, but it might take a little while because, again, like Jupiter is not a fast moving planet. And we've probably got, I think, because Jupiter just switched signs. So, again, for the Sagittarius people, there's going to be a good, almost year of this potentially transformational energy going on. Although these, like Mercury and Venus and Sun, these are fairly fast moving planets. So within a couple weeks or so, um, then they're going to shift into the eighth house for Sagittarius rising people. And so then we're going to have this kind of more shifting and I think deep shift in psychology once maybe some of the number crunching or business plan stuff has been developed, because then you're going to have to then it's like, it's fine to do the abstract work and like building a business plan, like, oh yeah, I want to do this and I want to do that and you have this great business and blah blah blah. But then once you get the ideas together and the plan together, then you have to shift and change kind of more for yourself and your psychology and your habits and everything into the kind of person that's going to support that business. And sometimes that's the hardest part. And so that's going to be the next step, in a couple of weeks when Mercury, Venus, Sun shift into eighth house. Okay, but with the eighth house, so there's some restoring and innovative, deep mind stuff going on here for sure. Yeah, then the ninth house here, the ninth house lord is Sun, and it's aspected by this massive Saturn. So there could be difficulty with authority, father, government here. Those are things that the ninth house represents. Um, yeah, so again, this could be like a resignation letter to the boss, potentially. Yeah, there could also be problems, between siblings and father, potentially. Father could be quite ill. Gurus, ninth house also represents guru, teacher, spiritual teacher. A guru could be going through some difficulties. Yeah, then the 10th house here, the 10th house lord is a swa compass Mercury. So we don't have a solid floor for the 10th house. And then we have Ketu there, which is kind of a separatist, unusual, kind of splitting type energy usually. Ketu happens to be in Hasta nakshatra at the moment. Hasta is symbolized by a hand. So, that can be like kind of a grabby energy. But with Ketu, you never quite know what Ketu is going to do. It can be an explosive type planet. It's kind of like Mars, but even more of a twist or unexpected quality to it. So what I was seeing here, especially since the 10th house is ruled by Virgo, which is an earth sign, this is literally like a sorting through process of what do I keep and what do I let go of? What not only like physical things, but like ideas and stuff like that. And then overall, again, like when you have K2 like this in the 10th house, this can potentially indicate somebody who has an unusual 9 to 5 job, which may be true. But we're also running K2 as the Mahadasha here, the main planetary period. So this could also, again, and this matches up with the other stuff I've been seeing, is this could be somebody quitting their job and doing this full-time, independent business thing. Yeah, and even if they were in a 9 to 5 job, it would be a fairly unstable, you know, uh, type thing, like maybe just picking up one gig here and one gig. I don't see a lot of stability in the 10th house. So, yeah, the other thing, what else is here? Oh, we do actually, there is the one kind of silver lining thing going on the 10th house is you do have this Jupiter and Rohini aspect in here. So again, this can be like, how do we shift and change and beautify and uplift whatever is going on in the 10th house? So again, the 10th house can be 9 to 5 job, activities, but it can also be just any kind of activities done during daytime. So this could, and since Jupiter's in the 6th house of daily kind of routine, this could be, and Jupiter represents spirituality. This could be like spiritualizing the daily routine, like developing a sadhana or daily practice, daily discipline. Is what I'm seeing here. So then the 11th house Lord is a combos Venus, and it's aspected by this massive Mars. So again, Mars is strong, but it can be erratic. So again, the 11th house represents things like clubs, groups, societies, and also income. Um, so there's going to be a churning here of both money and groups, which isn't, which we've been seeing, in terms of problems probably socializing for this person and ups and downs with money. So there's more of that. Then the 12th house Lord is a Swa Mars, aspected by Mars. So that's going to bring some protection here. That's nice in terms of losses. Saturn is also aspecting here and Jupiter as well. So there could also potentially be like releasing property because Mars and Saturn aspecting the 12th house of loss, expenditures, and losses. The Saturn and Mars are the two Bhumi karakas representing property and land. So there might be a conscious release there. It could also potentially be like a retreat, because the 12th house can represent isolated places like ashram or church or mosque or temple, that sort of thing. It could also be, the other thing is I was seeing here, is releasing a property and material things in a charitable way, like donate, like going, like potentially this person is not only going through like a personal inventory of self in terms of what's going to make me happy, but they could literally be going through their house and or whatever, or their apartment or whatever, and going through. It's like, does this clothing serve me? Does this clothing represent who I am and who I want, aspire to be? Do I need all this stuff in my apartment, or is it just like clutter? So I could see somebody going through like literally all of their stuff and just keep it or give it away or toss it in the bin or whatever. And then, some of the nicer stuff donating maybe to charity. And again, it goes along with the idea of like clearing space to become this new self, new identity, or develop this new lifestyle. Yeah. So it all fits together pretty nicely here. What else? We also, what I wrote here, Mars and Sun on the first house, fifth house, seventh house, eighth house. Okay. So Mars and Sun, those two planets are the leadership planets. They're also the fire planets, so they're very active. Now, the first house represents self and psychology. The fifth house represents intellect. The seventh house represents partnerships. And the eighth house represents like deep psychology. And the thing is, Mars and Sun, you've got Mars and Sun on Moon and, or at least you have Sun on Moon and Mercury. So, again, this is kind of getting at like a thought leader here. This is not somebody who's going to like just, go with the flow. You tell them to do this and that, and they're like complacently going to be like, oh, sure, whatever you want. Like, this is not that person. But if you want to say you want somebody who's going to come in and shake things up and, you know, shake that's this person. But again, with all the Rahu Ketu energy, and then you've got the Sun on Moon and Mercury. This is somebody who like leads, minds and emotions. Mm. And again, with all this, if we want to summarize all the energy for the whole chart, again, this is or even this moment in time is like a personal rebranding, upgrade, up leveling self, but especially mentally and emotionally. Yeah. So it's even like, am I happy wearing like a navy blazer to work? Or, you know, do I want to wear sneakers or, even that kind of stuff in terms of becoming more authentic and true to self. Okay, so now we're going to go through the amshas or sub-zodiacs or divisional charts, different names for the same thing. Okie doke. So the sub-zodiacs or amshas, we're going to look first at relationships. And so again, just general note with the amshas is that they're usually not analyzed just in and of themselves. They're mostly used for timing. So what you mostly want to do, like I wrote up here, the current dasha period for the chart, which is Ketu, Rahu, Venus, Moon. And I circled those planets because those are the ones that are going to be active. And then we're shifting to Ketu, Rahu, Sun, August 8th. So then I also circled Sun. So you can watch like the circled planets to see like which ones are going to be active and if they're in positive or negative houses. And then you always want to take what you get from the amshas and bring it back to the natal chart. So, okay, so the first chart here is the Navamsha D9 for spouse and partnerships, and the second chart is the Drake and a D3 for siblings. So in the first chart, which is nice, all the grahas are well placed. There is a parivartana, though, between Venus and Saturn. So that means Venus and Saturn are going to be all over the chart. That also means Venus and Saturn are like in Sambandha. Their energies are kind of tied together. And so that's another thing to note is that as we go through the amshas and stuff, you'll see that very often, again, Venus, which was challenged in the natal chart because it was Karka in the seventh house, you'll also see as we go through here that Venus is often compromised in various ways. And so here I would say, even though Venus is in a positive house, because it's in parivartana with Saturn and it's in Sambandha with Saturn, it's going to be bringing some of the Saturnian energy. So again, there can be, as I mentioned, with the seventh house in the natal chart, some disturbance, especially with the partner, mentally, emotionally, especially. There's going to be a drag here with Saturn being tied to, again, in Sambandha with Venus, especially because Saturn is so strong. So delays and obstacles, anxiety, doubts, depression, and then Saturn's in Purva Bhadrapada. So you've got that. So, but the thing is, Venus and Saturn would both be in the fifth house of practical counseling, and Venus and Saturn are both practical. Venus is the practical worldly counselor, and Saturn is definitely like a material type planet in many ways. But again, there's some attempt at like stepping forward towards better times. You do also have Sun and Rahu aspected by Jupiter into its own sign in the fourth house. So Again, drive, much like the natal chart, Rahu in the fourth house, a drive towards happiness and home. And then again, when we shift the dasha period to sun, sun, which represents things like the soul and purpose and career, we're looking at home and happiness here. So you're kind of seeing the same kind of drive towards happiness. And then with Jupiter there, there's a spiritualization going on here as well of all of this. Yeah. Um, the other thing is that you've got this Digbala Ketu, Ketu with directional strength in the 10th house here with the moon. So there's going to be some twists and turns here mentally and, purpose-wise, but also I would see here like somebody leaving 9 to 5 work. The other thing to note about this chart moving forward is as we go through, I think I went through 14 charts, with the main chart and then the main natal chart and then the amshas or whatever. Watch how many times Rahu and Ketu are on the 4-10 axis or in the kendras. I mean, it's shocking. It's shocking. Literally almost everyone. There are only 2 charts where Rahu and Ketu are not in the kendras. So since we're in the Rahu Ketu period dasha here, again, there's going to be like unexpected changes in the core identity of, again, this person or this moment in time. That's what the energy is bringing. Yeah. So then the Drakena. So luckily, again, it's the partner is having some challenges, but I think that there's some um, strength there as well, which is essentially what we're seeing with the 7th house and the natal chart. Then the Drakena D3 siblings. Well, Sun is not well placed. So again, if we're looking at D3 for siblings, then Sun not well placed in the 3rd house, this points back to the native. So there are changes going on here with the native in terms of purpose and a career. So that's just, you're getting the same message from the D3 here. You've got Rahu and a Digbala Ketu on the 4-10 axis. I mean, like, you can't make this stuff up. Again, unexpected chord changes. Then you have Swa Venus, Karko Bhavanasha Venus actually in the 7th house. So the partner could be having relationship issues, or at least the siblings partner could be having issues. And then you also have an exalted Sun or Saturn on Venus, the Swa Venus and Mercury. So you've got the massive Saturn on Venus and Mercury. So there's going to be, again, drag on Venus by Saturn and a drag on Mercury, the mind and decision making. And again, not only are you going to see a lot of challenge to Venus through these amshas, but you're going to see a lot of challenge to Mercury. And again, that's what's going on in the 7th house of the natal chart, right? I mean, Venus and Mercury just came out of war. So now it's like sorting through that, whatever the kind of inflammatory point was or flare up of last week. Now it's sorting through and it's like, okay, well, how are we going to do things better moving forward? So practical sorting of relationship issues and potentially business stuff going on here in the 7th house of siblings as well. And then the Karko Bhavanasha. So yeah, same stuff, more of the same stuff is what we're seeing here. Then the next 2 relationship charts, we're looking at the Saptamsha D7 for children at the top and the Dwadashamsha D12 for parents and grandparents down below. So in the children's chart, it's nice here. All the grahas are well placed in terms of being in positive houses. However, but just look at the 4th house here. I mean, you've got 4 malefics in the 4th house of education, for example, and home and mother. So, you know, uh, there might be, you might be kind of limping along here, but I'm not seeing this being a easy breezy time by any means, even though all the planets are well placed, because of their alignment here. And then this K2 Sun, Mars, Saturn combination. I mean, this is like a really tough combination in the 4th house. And then you've got Moon aspecting there and Jupiter. At least Jupiter's exalted there. So again, that could bring some, again, spiritualization potentially. But you've got these mad mix of malefics in the fourth house. That's going to be pretty tough. Again, all these things affecting home and happiness. So then, what else we've got here? At least Venus is well placed and kind of out of the mix a little bit. So again, the Venus, the practical counselor in the fifth house of counseling, this could be trying to find some kind of help, with kids here. The other thing is because of this mix here of not only do you have Moon and Jupiter aspecting K2, Sun, Mars, Saturn here, but you've got Sun, Mars, Saturn aspecting a debilitated Jupiter and Moon with Rahu. So you've basically got four malefics on the Moon of emotional mind and intuitive mind and imagination, with the debilitated Jupiter. So Jupiter's not going to be able to do much to help out. And then Venus is out of the mix and not very strong. Mercury is luckily in its own sign, but it's in the sixth house. So that may be like, and we're not running Mercury right now, but that may be that at some point when we do run Mercury, um, again, that it would help to do like daily meditation with the kids or for the kids or something like that. So, yeah, I'm still seeing this as a fairly challenged Amsha for children, which again gets back to the Saturn aspecting into the fifth house. Even though there's strength with Mars in its own sign in the fifth house in the natal chart, you do have that massive Saturn also disturbing things, and then you have the karaka of children, Jupiter in the sixth house. So again, there's strength but challenges simultaneously going on here with kids. And then Jyotish Moon is not well placed, and it's in the eighth house of deep psychology. It's also aspected by Saturn, so again, more drag on mind, moon emotions, anxiety, depression, doubts I could see here. But again, in these two charts, like look, K2 Rahu on both of them, 410 axis. I mean, it's kind of crazy already, but we're going to see more of it. So keep track, keep count if you want. So Swa Digbala K2, directional strength K2, and that's aspected by Mars. So there's going to be strength, but there's going to be a lot of turbulence just because of the nature of those two planets of Mars and K2 there. And Venus is, in the mix too, but this could actually be like problems with relationships actually. But I could also see like letting go of control here in the daily activities. And again, since we're talking about parents, I think the parents are worried, but I think they're also like trying to like let go and let this person work their stuff out, especially if they, if they're realistic about their kid, the native, then they know that they're going to do their own thing anyway because that's just who they are. That's their energy. And you can even think of it as karma or destiny. Yeah. Um, there is a parivartana between Jupiter and Mercury. So Jupiter and Mercury are going to be all over the chart. So education and communication. So I think at least the parents, grandparents are like, they may not be like trying to, assert themselves, but I think they would be more of the kind of parents, grandparents who research and think things out and get information and talk about it and that sort of thing, but then ultimately leave their kids to make up their own minds about stuff. Um, and then we've got this Rahu Swa, Venus in the fourth house. So again, ambition towards home. And at least Venus here is Swa in its own sign, so there's some strength here. But there's also Mars here, so there's some disruptions with family. When Sun comes around, when we get to that period, Sun is Swa in the second house. So I think that when we get to the Sun period, there's going to be a little bit more harmony with family and inner circle. But, at least this time, there's there's some worries and, trying to also create, I think, with this Rahu Venus in the fourth house here, like, some stability and sense of home for the native. So that may be the support that what the parents and grandparents are offering now. And the other thing is that, again, if we did look at just the planets that are circled here and active through the Dasha period, Sun represents father, Moon represents mother, Rahu and Ketu represent maternal and paternal grandparents. So I think the family is deeply like more emotionally involved, but still being like fairly hands off in terms of like ultimately it's your decision about what direction you want to go. But we'll do our research and come up with like you get like that kind of parent where like, oh, I saw this article on Google, like it might be interesting for you, in terms of what you want to do. Like those are the kind of parents that I'm seeing here. Okay, now on this chart or on this slide, we've got the subzodiac amshas, divisional charts for education and career. The first chart's the Siddhamsha D24 for education. The second chart's the Shamsha D10 for career. Now, these are the only, I mentioned you see Rahu and Ketu almost in all the charts on the 410 axis, or at least in the kendras. These are the only two charts where Rahu and Ketu are not in the kendras. So make note here, education and career. Now, what's interesting is Rahu and Ketu are actually on the 6-12 axis. So, sixth house of enemies, debts, and 12th house of, losses, expenditures, and hidden enemies. So again, it's kind of like the reason why in the natal chart there might be issues with education and career is because again, this is a very unusual, unique person that's probably not even interested in fitting in, but may have tried. But the thing is, like, their unusualness is not going to be appreciated in the kind of more conventional institutions of education and career. And that's what we're seeing here. But I'll go through them a little bit, in more detail. So the Siddhamsha D24, K2, Rahu, Venus, not well placed. So problems with education, which we saw in the natal chart. And with Rahu and K2 being in the 12th house here, this could be somebody who's leaving or taking a break from studies to pursue home and their true home and happiness, whatever they decide that is. And this could also potentially be they might be taking a break from school or leaving school because of problems with partner. Because we see here Venus is in the um, 8th house here. At least Venus is swab, but again, it's in a negative house here. And what else do we have? And you do have Sun and Moon in the 4th house here of education. And you can see Sun and Moon here, so mom and dad. But you do have this Saturn that's debilitated aspecting into its own sign in the 4th house. So even though parents might be educated or supporting or encouraging education, it's going to be a slog. And at least Saturn's, aspecting its own sign. So there might be a possibility here, but at least right now, it's going to be a very challenging time for education. So it might be better to wait. Although if we're running K2 after K2 is Venus, so it's at least early. Again, if this is like if we were looking at a newborn baby or something like that, this would indicate like actually there might be troubles with education early on, like during primary school, and then once they get into because after Venus is sun period, then moon period, um, it would probably be a little bit better, but there's still gonna be a slog because you've got that Saturn in its own sign. Like it's gonna be a lot of work. It's not gonna be an easy breezy like trip, down education road for this person. Um, you know. So anyway, and then the Dashamsha here, D10 career, Rahu K2 again not well placed, and then we've got Saturn on both of them too. So it's gonna make it even worse. Unexpected troubles and delays here at career, which again, that's what we were seeing in the main chart. There's also a parivartana between Mars and Mercury here. So this could be a lot of innovative thoughts, but also competition and arguments, frankly. Because Mars is a fighting planet and Mercury's the communication planet. So a lot of skirmishes I'm seeing here. Um, the 5th house, you have a debilitated Venus, so not a lot of great how do I say, counsel or advice. You have Mars there, and then with parivartana, it's like you have Mercury, Mars, Venus in the fifth house. And then the thing about, and then you have a aspect from Jupiter here. So the thing about that is Mars is the sole enemy of Mercury, and the sole enemy concept you only use in the Amshas. So again, fights, and then you have Jupiter aspecting Venus, and Jupiter is the sole enemy of Venus. So you, even though like it kind of seems like okay, you've got Mars and Venus and Mercury and Jupiter, so there's creativity here. Actually a Saraswati yoga in this chart. There's a lot of fighting going on, which again, just knowing how Rahu Ketu influence this chart is, that's not surprising actually. So again, the 9 to 5 corporate, traditional corporate job stuff is not, I think, on board for this person or at this time if we're talking about a moment in time. So there can be a lot of confusing advice here with this situation in the fifth house. The nice thing though is that when we move into the sun period, you've got the swa sun in the fourth house of happiness and home. So this might be kind of a unsettling time, but once you move into sun, you might start to get some traction in terms of once the decisions are made and once you start moving in the direction of whatever the business plan or something is, it looks like there's going to be a major uplift, upgrade there, or improvement there, I would say. Okay, now if we look at wealth, we have here the Rudramsha D11 for income at the top, and then the second chart is Chatra Tamsha D4 for assets. So again, if you notice, Rahu and Ketu, one of them's on the 410 axis, but both of them are in the Kendras, so we're getting more of that. But in the first chart here of income, we have Venus is not well placed, and it's with its soul, a very strong soul enemy, Jupiter, Swa here. So, not a great Antra subperiod. There's a parivartana between Saturn and Moon. So that's also, going to be challenging because that means that you've got a lot of Saturn all over the chart, so obstacles and delays, and also Moon, so ideas and emotions. So there can be, again, emotional issues here regarding income. And then what else did I put? And then, oh, the other thing is that, when you do the parivartana with Saturn and Moon, that means you have Saturn, a very strong Saturn with Sun and Moon here. So Saturn's going to be in Aquarius with Sun and Moon, again, mom and dad. So mom and dad might have pretty strong traditional or fixed ideas about income. So that might be the rub and why they're worried, if somebody's like going down a non-traditional path, potentially like, is this going to work, or is this, is our kid going to end up on the street? That's a normal kind of parent or parental thought or worry. Uh, why did I have Rahu K2 here? 7, 8. I wrote here tension between Rahu K2 and Sun, Moon, Saturn, and Aquarius. Oh, it's more of the same essentially. So this Rahu and Ketu that we're running here, again, this Rahu and Ketu in the Kendras of all these amshas, that means that all of these different aspects of this person's life, like income, this person is going to benefit from deriving income in an unusual, unconventional way. And then in assets here, we have Rahu and Ketu on the 4 or 10 axis. This person is going to derive access or, unusual assets or derive assets in an unusual way. So, it's like people might think like, why is this person always, doing this like weird thing or, bizarro thing or something like that? But that's their energy. And actually, with Rahu and Ketu and these Kendras, they're going to benefit from doing things in a non-conventional way. So, but if the parents are more traditional, I'm sure it's going to be like a nail biting session for the. So that's where that came from, is that the parents might be quite traditional and concerned, but again, it just the nature and destiny pattern of this person is to do things in an unconventional way. So yeah, but again, the Rahu, Ketu, Sun, and Moon, they're all in positively placed. It's just right now Venus is a challenge, but when we move to Sun, you have Moon. So yeah, there's still some worries and stuff like that, but once we move into the Sun period, income should be a little bit better. And then also right now Venus is combust, and Venus is the lugnatia here of the chart. The other thing is that the lugnatia has gone to a negative house, and the thing is, in the amshas, when the lugnatia goes to a negative house, we call that I believe it's a swapna, which is like a sleeping, dreaming state. So, based on this person um, is not somebody who's going to be highly motivated um, to make a lot of income. I don't think that's going to be their primary motive in terms of their career and jobs and stuff like that. I think they're looking for freedom and authenticity. They might be currently, because again, the Jupiter is in an Artistana now. But there is this. Well, I guess you could at least call it tension between the material world and the person's primary motivations in terms of income. So there's that. Then the Chatra Tamsha here, all the grahas are well placed, which is nice. The Lugnatia, Mercury is aspecting its own, the Lugna here. So that's going to bring strength to the assets category. Jupiter is also aspecting Mercury in its own sign. That's going to bring strength and optimism because Mercury and Moon are both there. So I think there's more optimism here in terms of assets. So this person might be better at like managing assets rather than like a salaried position. That could be another possibility for this person. Especially since Saturn's aspecting Mars in the fifth house. It could be maybe this person is interested in like renting properties or something like that. Like do an Airbnb, like have some properties and rent them out and make money that way instead of like a traditional 9 to 5 job. That could happen too. What else? We have Rahu and Ketu on the fourth axis again. It keeps happening. So this chart is actually very similar, I would say, to the natal chart because you got Sun. Look at this. You got Sun, Mercury, and Moon again on the 1-7 axis. Venus is in a different place. It's debilitated in the fourth, but exalted in the was exalted in the 10th house now. So yeah, and then again we've got another dual lugna chart. So we're thinking both sides of career and purpose. I'm seeing here Rahu's with the debilitated Venus, and then we got a Digbala Ketu again. So again, sorting through items to make room for new activities and increase happiness. Was there anything else here? Generally assets look pretty good. So, this person might be better off with like asset management of some kind. Like maybe properties or um, what else would be strong here? Education. And again, what we're seeing is kind of like in the natal chart, like it seemed like mind and emotion stuff. So it could be like intellectual property. There you go. Intellectual property from this chart is what I'm getting. Yeah, so there you go. Okay, so now we're looking at health issues, acute issues here. So the top charts, the Tajik Shashtamsha D6 for acute issues. Then we have the Tajik Ashtamamsha D8 for chronic issues. Then the Bhamsha D27 for strength and resilience. So at the top here, Venus is not well placed. So again, Venus challenged. And again, that's like, a lot of relationships potentially and emotional stuff. And also the spouse or partner might be off somewhere. So maybe they're traveling abroad. That could be the 12th house. It could also be partners kind of in retreat mode if they're having issues. It could also potentially be hospitalization, if they're, that unwell that they need to be hospitalized or something. So Venus is not well placed and it's aspected by its sole enemy, a very strong Jupiter here. It's also aspected by Saturn, so that's a lot of challenge for Venus, as we've been seeing. Ketu and Rahu, they're in Kendras again, this time in the 7th house, and they're aspected by Mercury and a debilitated Mars, so that's going to be so Mercury, Mars is a soul enemy of Mercury, so there's going to be a lot of like again mental churning here. Mercury's the logical mind, and Mars is contention and innovation, but also arguments and competition and K2. So basically, you have 3 malefics on Mercury. So this is not going to be an easy time. This, generally speaking, this is, and what we're seeing in the natal chart as well. This is not somebody who has an easy time making decisions. And again, there's this, essentially, so with Mercury, Mars, Ketu, Rahu on the 1-7 axis, difficulty sorting through which relationships and projects to keep. Seeing that. Luckily, the moon is exalted with sun in the 11th house. So this could be, again, like new clubs or groups or deriving new streams of income. So, even though Venus is the only planet not well placed and it's a relatively short antra, like there's still going to be challenge for this person chronically and acutely, yeah. Then the second chart here, the Tajik Ashtamamsha D8 for chronic issues. Well, we've got a Vargodama Lugna here, so same Lugna as a raising sign as the natal chart, so this is an important chart. And you can see, once again, Mercury, Rahu, Ketu all together in the Lugna here. Jupiter, luckily, the Lugnatia for this chart is Swa, and luckily Jupiter is Swa in the 4th house of happiness. But you can see also that you've got Mercury, Rahu, Ketu, Jupiter, Moon, Sun, Saturn, 1, 2, 7 out of 9 planets in dual signs. That's a lot of sorting. Like that could be draining, I think, for this person to constantly have to, because there were a bunch of planets like this in the natal chart as well. Like there's a lot of sorting and mentally and emotionally for a person to make the decisions. And ultimately, they do make good decisions, right? Because we saw that Mercury, Swa, Venus, Sun combination with the Moon, and in the 7th house of like, are they following their like path? They will, but there's a lot of drag and work internally to just commit to those steps and move forward. So, and you can see Venus is in the 12th house again, and Mars is aspecting Venus. So, again, difficulties with partners, probably a bit isolated. And then we have Saturn. So we have Saturn on Mars, and then and the Mars on Venus. So you can see that there's a uh, flowing downhill negative energy on Venus here. So Venus again is challenged. Um, and again, this really strong Jupiter is also on Venus. So there you go. Then swallow nation. Yeah, so I mentioned that the strong Jupiter in the 4th house. So that's good, but we're not running Jupiter right now. But at least Moon and Sun, you can see Moon and Sun. So mind and soul are also aspecting this 4th house of a Swa with the Swa Jupiter. So again, there's still this trend or directionality of the mind and soul moving towards happiness, despite, I think, the friction potentially between the outer world and the inner world of being authentic versus like fitting in. So, but yeah, difficulties in relationship, decision making, moving towards new activities and new work. And this is that moon and sun in the 10th house of it can be work, but just like whatever activities during the day. Excuse me. So, again, managing physical property or intellectual property potentially. Yeah. And again, I would say focus on becoming an authentic self. What's genuinely going to make, this person, or again, if we're looking at collective energy, what genuinely makes each of us happy and fulfilled. Yeah, so that's on the table. And then the Bhamsha here, D27 for general strength and resilience. all the grahas are well placed. So again, if we're talking about a person here, this is somebody who's going to, despite the, you know, inner work, and it looks like there's a lot of inner work with sorting through what's really going to make them happy. This is somebody who ultimately, whenever they do make a decision, they're going to make a good decision, it looks like, for the most part. And they're going to work through obstacles of like, income variation and stuff like that. Um, they're going to have the strength to do it. But again, you can see uh, Rahu Ketu here with Moon and Sun, on that 4 or 10 axis again. So parents and grandparents, there's some support here, I think. But what else? You do have Saturn with Venus again, and you have Mars. So you have two malefics on Venus again. So even though Venus is well placed in a positive house, you still got challenges to Venus, which we've consistently seen. And I could see this being somebody who's like very choosy about their inner circle. Like very conscientious about who's on in the in group here and who's kind of more peripheral in this person's life. Um, what else do I see here? And Sun is exalted. I mean, that's nice. So again, we have a strong Jupiter in the D8. We have a strong Sun, soul, purpose, career, in the D27. Um, yeah, so again, I think, despite the challenges, this is the kind of person who's gonna, work their way through it and not get too bogged down by this kind of stuff. Um, it's just kind of their MO. So it might take them a while to sort through things and figure out what they want to do, but ultimately they'll make good choices and find their way to, happy land. So that's all good. Okay, and then we've got the last slide here for spirituality and worship. So at the top, we've got the Panchamsha D5 for innate spirituality. This is kind of like organic, each of our own organic type spirituality. And then the second chart is the Vimshamsha D20 for more formal worship institutes type stuff. So in the top, Venus, Sun, Moon, not well placed. So challenging times, but hold on. You do have Jupiter aspecting its own sign of the sixth house here. It's going to bring a lot of spirituality to the sixth house, and Venus is there in the sixth house, but it's exalted, and you have Moon aspecting there. So you actually have a very strong Jupiter, very strong Venus, Sun, and Moon in the sixth house. So what I was seeing here is that this is somebody who's probably currently very actively involved in developing a daily discipline, a spiritual practice, maybe going on retreat even, that's actually going to serve them pretty well. The thing though is that again, this may be at odds with other people. You do have this really strong Saturn, exalted Saturn on Mercury again. Um, so that's slow, difficult decision making here. Um, and you also have a parivartana exchange of houses between Mercury and Mars. So this could be again, arguments and stuff like that. Yeah, potentially. So I don't think this is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Some people might find this daily practice business like strange or weird or whatever. It's not going to be for everybody, but especially when you have Moon and Venus here involved with the sixth house of daily practice and maybe the 12th house of retreats and stuff. You do also have Mars aspecting the 12th house here. This could actually be actually focusing on the daily discipline and sadhana and stuff like that might be the way to actually find your soul tribe or soul family, whatever comrades on the path. It's actually going to be very emotionally fulfilling, is what I'm saying here. So again, not a conventional way to go about things, but true and authentic, and ultimately, I think satisfying, fulfilling. So it just might be right now. It's in process of developing the kind of daily discipline, but I think good will come of it. At least fulfillment will come from it. And then the Vimshamsha D20 here, Moon and Sun are not well placed, and those are in the 6th house again. So again, there's some shifting going on here. You have Jupiter again aspecting its own sign. So again, there's a spiritual, again, I'm seeing sadhana again here, daily spiritual practice. And this time, instead of Jupiter, Sun, Moon, you have Jupiter, Sun, Moon in both in the 6th house, the D5 and the D20. In the D5, you have Venus involved as well. And then in the second one, you have Mercury involved through aspect. And you have Mercury in its own sign in the 12th house of, isolated places and things like that. So again, I'm saying meditation, retreat, sadhana, daily practice. So meditating daily, the sadhana practice daily, even it's like whatever mantras or yantra or, doing Jyotish. I mean, Jyotish is my sadhana. That's part of my spiritual practice. Doing that daily will help potentially with troubles and other daily activities because you do have a debilitated Saturn in the 10th house of things you do during the daylight hours. And that debilitated Saturn is going to drag on Mercury, the mind. But, if you have a chance to step away and do your daily practice, then you can maybe relieve yourself of some of that. The other thing about this D20 that I like to see, this is the first time I'm seeing exalted Venus in a positive sign without any negative planet on it. So, so that was good. So what I'm seeing here is that satsang, spiritual community, in this D9, or the 9th house here, not the D9, the B9. There's a potential here of like a strong spiritual community. Again, this is going to be some alternative community because you got Rahu and Ketu and the Kendras here. But this is where you might find your soul family potentially is through. Actually, it's almost like the more and more you become authentic and the more and more you do these, like what many other people might consider strange or unusual, that's where you're going to find your real community there. It's almost like, let the freak flag fly. It's like rather than like hitting the brakes and like, should I do this or not? Or is this too weird? Or are people going to accept me or not? It's almost like just fully embrace it and do it. And then, your people will show up kind of thing. Then Sun, Moon, what do I have here? Yeah, Delhi mental sadhana. There's also, okay, so that's a little bit of a warning, I think, is that there's a parivartana here between Saturn and Mars. And you can see Saturn's debilitated in the 10th house. So that's, activities during the day. And then you have Mars in Aquarius in the 8th house of deep psychology. So when you get a parivartana here, you're going to have Saturn and Mars all over the chart. And again, when Saturn and Mars meet up and they're in some banda like that, you can get like a very rigorous, disciplined, athletic, engineering type energy. So I would exercise a little bit of caution that you can, or at least this person or whatever, can potentially overdo it, like be overzealous and kind of over rigorous with their kind of formal worship, and that would potentially be problematic. So, everything in balance, kind of thing. So there can, again, that's the parivartana between Saturn and Mars would bring discipline and endurance, but maybe too much so. And it would also potentially bring a fresh perspective. It's just you want to be careful about with that kind of combination, overdoing it or going extreme with whatever this formal worship situation is. Yeah. So again, just to summarize here, like, again, I've gone through 14 charts, and out of 14 charts, Rahu and Ketu were in Kendras. So, and we're running Rahu, Ketu, Rahu, Mahadasha, and Bhukti. So it's all about, doing things a different way right now. The exceptions here are education and career, but that may be why, again, we're seeing in the natal chart and then also the amshas here that looks like there are moves away from conventional education and a conventional 9-to-5 jobs. The other thing is Venus was challenged in almost all these charts except this D20. It was either aspected by Saturn or Mars or debilitated or negative house. and that was, I think, 12 out of 14 charts as well. So, again, it's an emotional time, and again, um, I think again for this type of person, I don't think they have like it's not like they're surrounded by tons and tons of people. That it's some people have that kind of attitude. It's like, oh well, I've got plenty of friends. If I lose one here or there, it's like no big deal. Like this is going to be somebody who again probably has less friends, but like deep soulful relationships. And so this process of sorting through things is, because of their decision-making process, which seems to be, kind of arduous. But also because it's like, I think this is somebody who does value relationships and you just don't want to like, casually, or nonchalantly sort of toss somebody to the side. That's not what I'm seeing here. Okay, so that's the full moon that we've got going on here. Also, while I was putting this talk together, I came across these things which seem to fit like kind of with the energy of the moment. So I just thought I would include it in case they were helpful or interesting to people. But this picture I found, and I kind of typed, what did I type in? Art is life. And you can see this like paintbrush like painting the road. And that seemed to kind of fit like the energy of this chart. But then also these words I came across, or they just kind of popped up in my feed, and I was like, oh, this seems spot on for this moment in time. So when you wake up each morning, tell yourself, I cannot control the world without, but I can control the world within and transform it into the most beautiful place possible by controlling what I allow to enter my heart and by choosing what I make of it. And then through my example and perspective, the outside world will begin to change. So that's a much more poetic way of, I think, summarizing what I've just gone through with the chart here. The words here by Talia Hunter, at least that's what was listed. Also, the artwork on the first slide of that woman with the red hair by Bernie Anderson. This piece of art, I don't know the source, but it's not mine. I don't want to claim it. The other thing that again popped up in my feed as I was going through putting this talk together was this by Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, who I've followed for a long time, and he tends to come up with these phrases that kind of stick in my head, and so I know for myself when I challenging moments like some phrase of his will pop up and I'm like it's very helpful for helping me shift things, but like what he was talking about in my feed yesterday was the only thing to focus on is your destiny. Be interested in that, and the matters of this world will take care of themselves. And so, again, it seems like there can be a lot of outside influence and drag and things like that. Again, if this is a person for them or in this moment of time, but to really focus on like what is my destiny, and not put so much energy or focus on potential obstacles or what other people think or do or other people's value systems or whatever. um, that's when we get really, that's when we align, like in the natal chart, our heart and our mind and our spirit and our soul, and then we become like an arrow, and then all that drag, from the outside world tends to fade away. And there will be challenges, but it's at least there'll be less internal drag. Or there might be external drag occasionally, but in any case, hopefully you found these words and the picture helpful. All right, so as always, I want to thank you for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. All of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. If you're looking for more birth charts of famous people, places, and moments in time, you can check out my birth charts archive list 2024 video for a list of all the charts I've gone through and the videos you can find them in. I do offer individual birth chart readings live on Zoom and as a recorded video. You can email heartlightastra@yahoo.com if you have interest in that. And then I have another YouTube channel on natural medicine that covers other Vedic arts such as Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, and yoga, as well as other paradigms of medicine like homeopathy and naturopathic medicine. The name of that channel is Nature Source Care. So if that's out there too, if it's useful. So, as always, I hope you found this talk interesting, helpful, and useful to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right, so until the next one, take good care and namaste.